Hi, I'm Ted. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about this Forney welder that I bought and why. So if you've been following along the last couple of videos, my daughter bought a short bus that we're going to work on converting after we finished our big one, and it's got some significant rust in the floor that I'll show you. So it's going to have to do a lot of welding, and the welder that I had isn't going to cut it. So this video is going to be predominantly about what to look for in a welder if you are a beginner like me. I've welded before a little bit, but I'm really not very good at it. And so really going to look at the features that I looked at when trying to figure out what's best for a beginning skoolie conversion process person weld project. If that made any sense. So we wrote a more detailed blog post on different welding machines and things to think about and types, and you can check that out at edit-line.com. But so for this video, I'm just going to walk you kind of through the process real quick about the different kinds and why I chose this. So there are really four different kinds, I guess. You have your traditional stick welding, you have MIG, TIG, and flux core. So let's talk about those. Okay, so this is a stick welder or an arc welder. And essentially you create an electrical arc, you put your ground clamp to the metal work on, you put a stick, your rod, electrode in this clamp, you strike the surface and drag along, and I guess you can push too, and you create the weld that way. These are actually really powerful, and again, I ended up buying this one honestly because when I did my first bus conversion, I thought, well, I could use a welder, and I saw this on like Craigslist for $100, and I wasn't sure if I wanted it. I told the guy, well, I don't know, I'll give you $50. Sold! And so I had a stick welder. It's really dusty because of the wood shop down here. And what I found was it was too hot. I ended up melting a lot of holes in metal because the metal that I was trying to weld on a bus was pretty thin. And so I decided that this really wasn't going to cut it for the applications that I needed for this other bus. So MIG welding stands for metal inert gas, and it's where you have a spool feeder of wire that feeds wire, and it works in a similar concept about electrical arc is created, which is hot enough to melt the wire and melt the metal and fuse it together. But it also has gas, the metal in it, and I think it's argon gas that goes through and helps shield the weld so that oxygen and other impurities don't get in there and weaken the weld. TIG welding is similar in the sense it uses tungsten inert gas, also shields it. But TIG, I don't know a ton about TIG welding because when I looked at it, it's super expensive, requires a lot of skill, and so that almost immediately took it out of my price range and out of my interest. And so I couldn't tell you a whole lot about TIG welding because it's not for me. Which then leads us to the flux core welder. And the flux core has flux inside the wire which helps shield it from the impurities of oxygen. So it's kind of like an easier, simpler version, from what I understand, of the MIG welding. And the reason that I decided to go with the flux core welder is because I didn't want to have to deal with the expense and the sophistication of dealing with gas bottles and a whole other element. I needed to learn how to weld quickly and simply, and with really not a ton of materials. I'm going to be welding just steel with the bus, so I didn't need to be super fancy. So that's why what I thought for me, for my needs as a beginner welder, I went with the flux core. So let's kind of walk through the features and the characteristics and the things that to consider in looking for a welder and what I did. So one thing is looking for is the power input source. What kind of power are you going to use? If you're going to get into welding steel, it's quarter inch or above, you're probably going to need a more powerful welder than so normal. This has got basically just a 110 plug where you could plug into pretty much any outlet. You're going to want a 20 amp circuit for it. But again, pretty user friendly. You can use it. If you're getting into much more, you're going to have to use probably welders that plug in a 220, which kind of like your dryer. You need a special plug and special wiring for that. And that can get tricky, especially if you're outside and looking for a, if you need some outlet or extension cord, which they frown upon with welders anyway. So consider power source. And like power input, you also want to consider power output. You know, how many amps can that welder put out for the degrees of metal. And what's cool, I guess, is we have sort of a chart inside here. It tells you exactly what you can do. So we can get up to, according to this welder, we got pretty good range. We can go all the way down to 22 gauge steel, all the way up to 1/4 inch. And one of the things I liked about this welder, it did have a pretty high range, and a lot of them only get up. My dog is now shaking the camera. I'm sorry about that. Up to about 1/4 inch, which all the other ones that I looked at were 1/8 of an inch. So, and again, this is a 140. Again, which is pretty good range and pretty powerful for one of the sort of entry-level flux core welders. Another thing to consider is your wire feed and your voltage controls. And this has knobs, so they call them infinite controls, meaning that you can dial them in, you know, pretty much to the exact increment you need. A thinner material is going to need a smaller voltage, smaller power, and also a slower wire feed speed. Whereas a thicker metal, you want more voltage and a faster wire speed. Maybe some of the welders I looked at only had like a higher low. You can't really dial them in, and I wanted, again, given my lack of experience, wanted to be able to play with a bunch of different settings, because then you get your speed you have to go at, and I just wanted as much control as I could get to try to match my ineptitude with metal. So another factor to look at is duty cycle, and duty cycle is how long it can weld before it needs to break and cool down, because, well, again, we're dealing with melting metal, which requires high temperatures, and so machines need that cool down point, so they don't self-destruct. So duty cycles are rated in basic percentages. So this one has a 30% duty cycle at 90 amps, which means if you're running it at 90 amps, you can weld for 3 minutes, and then it needs to rest for 7. Right? So 30% and 70%. A lot of the machines at this entry level had a 20% duty cycle, and this one had a little bit higher, so that's like, I don't know, an extra minute per 10 that I can create projects. Another thing to look at with machines is the spool size that they can handle. Some of the other machines, like the less expensive ones, not that this is super expensive, have only one size spool. This one you can put the 4-inch or the 8-inch spool in, and I just got the 4-inch spool to get started. But if you look at it economically, it's cheaper to buy an 8-inch spool, and so you can put either one in this, and so you get the versatility of this machine that didn't necessarily have with the other machine. What are you doing? So how does the machine work, you ask? Well, that's a good question. I'm still working on it. Again, I don't know if this is a reflection so much on the machine or is it on me. So I started with some thicker stuff, and actually this wasn't pretty bad. I tried it before and melted some stuff with my stick welder, but these beads here are actually stuff that I did with this welder once I dialed in the wire speed. So I'm actually pretty happy that came in okay. You can see that right there. These beads here, not bad for rookie. Pretty rugged, definitely doesn't pull apart. So some other stuff I tried with some thinner metal, and I think this is like 24 gauge, and you can see I got some holes in there. Again, trying to really sort of dial it in, trying to get my speed in, and not some really good work. And then I started to get better here. I'm trying to get my camera to focus on that, and had a hard time actually trying to keep it straight on there. But really not a lot of holes in there, and you can actually see where I started grinding that down. That actually looks fairly seamless here. So I'm starting to dial in this machine a little bit better and get better with the thin stuff, which is the goal ultimately when you get to the floor of the bus. Although the bus floor is significantly thicker than this too, so I think it'll be even easier. I know I was looking at code, and Virginia has a code that bus floors need to be 14 gauge. So this is well within this machine. Yeah, it's halfway, but it's kind of right in the middle of its range. So it should be perfect for that when we get to that phase. So sort of recap why this machine. Like I said, I have way too many things going on, and I just don't have the time or the interest. I don't want to have to deal with gas bottles and learning that system, and then also MIG welders tend to be a little bit more expensive. TIG was way out of the question, and I already have a stick welder. So really kind of moving into this this flux core welder seemed to be the way to go for me. I wanted something easy that I could get into. This particular machine I found, again, I looked at some of the ones that they're like the titanium and the Vulcans over at Harbor Freight, and I thought that this had better value than those. Between the Vulcan was significantly more expensive, this one, and the reviews were pretty decent. I'll talk about reviews in a second. But I like the range of this. And so it, again, from thin metal all the way up to the 1/4 inch, I thought it had a bigger range for a better price, with many of the better features than I saw with the other models. And when I went and looked at the reviews, this machine was also pretty well reviewed by people who seemed to know what they were doing. One of the challenges of going through reviews is that honestly, there are a bunch of whack jobs out there. You know, people who are like, I bought this $15 product 3 years ago and it got a scratch on it and I'm unhappy with it. And like, all right, what do you expect? Or, you know, it came dented. Well, that's not really the product's fault. That's the United Breaks Guitars video. If you've seen that, that could be the shipping people. And then other people who don't really, I've never welded before and it works great, and I used it once. So I try to look through the reviews of people who sound like they know what they're talking about. You know, I've welded before, and you know, this isn't necessarily the pro deal, but it's a great value, and I created this with it. And I looked at how many reviews those are. And there were several reviews of people who have welded before, who seem to know what they're talking about, who says, yeah, this isn't a perfect machine, but it's pretty solid for what you get. And really, that's the most realistic thing I think we can ask for. So anyway, that was my thought process. If any of you out there are considering getting a welder, you go to the website, again, eddie-line.com. You can check out that article. I put a chart in there which kind of outlines when it goes through all the data of all the welders out there. I went through the research to pick this one, so I might as well share it with you guys. So again, there's an affiliate link if you do decide to buy something. You know, we'll get a slight commission on that, which would be great. If you want to support that. If not, that's fine. You can go to your own link. Like I said, I did all the research anyway. Figured I'd share it with you guys. So best of luck out there. I'll keep you posted for sure. You know, we're going to be ripping out that floor pretty quick and grinding it down and hopefully getting some material in there. And we'll show you how the machine works in process. So I hope it's been helpful. Best of luck with your own projects. Like, subscribe, do all those things that you do, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching.